So we are excited and a little overwhelmed by the turnout, and thrilled that you're here. We didn't know completely what to expect. This is the first of 7 events planned for this year along similar lines. And so again, we're thrilled that you're here on the first one of the year. So just to start off, let me tell you this story. A proton, a neutron, and an electron walk into a bar. You guys all know this one? And the neutron says, "How much for a beer?" And the bartender says, "No charge for you." Okay? And that's why we've made this event free for all the Caltech folks, okay? No charge for you. And thank you for all the non-Caltech folks who helped to offset the food costs. We know that food is an important part of life on a college campus. Should I tell the Higgs boson joke, or no? Yeah, okay. So a Higgs boson particle walks into a bar on a Sunday, and the bartender says, "You have to go to church right now." And the Higgs boson particle says, "Why?" And the bartender says, "Well, without you, they don't have Mass." Okay. Anyway, that's not why you came here. Anyway, so my name's Len Tang. I'm one of the organizers of the Science and Faith Examined project. I lead a local church here, and I'm kind of your MC for tonight. I actually grew up here in Pasadena. My mom used to work at Caltech. I got into Caltech, but decided to go to Berkeley instead. So, you know, that's how it goes. The mission of Science and Faith Examined is to create a collegial environment for conversations about science and faith at Caltech and beyond. And we're excited again that you've come out here tonight. And anything worth doing is done by a team, and I just want to quickly acknowledge the folks who kind of made this possible, and actually are scrambling even now to kind of get additional food. So real briefly, I'd like to just have the members of the planning team for Safe stand where you are, and just want to shout out to Jonas Lippenauer of GCF. Thanks to John Lee of CCF, John Pang of Bridges, Jeff Still, the project co-leader, and who did all the graphics and web and social media that let all of you know about this, and to Sally Alway, the Caltech staff member who did an amazing job and provided all the logistical leadership to kind of pull this thing off. So great team at work. And lastly, the Science and Faith project was made possible by a grant through something called STEAM, Science and Theology and Emerging Adult Ministries, which was administered at a Fuller Seminary here in Pasadena. So we're grateful that they helped offset the costs. Well, we're here because we believe that both science and faith are truth-seeking endeavors. And so we're here to seek the truth. And hopefully that's going to invoke our curiosity, our humility, conversation, collaboration, and growth. That's going to happen for all of us as we listen and talk around these tables. And so we're going to have this talk and then some discussion groups. There's discussion group leaders, hopefully at every table. Because we a little overflowed, we're going to improvise a little bit on that as well. But we've prepared some questions following the talk. Each speaker in the series that we have brings his or her own perspective, and we brought them in to kind of jumpstart the conversations among us. So without further ado, I want to have the person who's introducing tonight's speaker, Bijan Yamani, come up. Bijan is the project scientist for Science and Faith Examined, and he's an astrophysicist who's been a senior engineer at JPL for the last 15 years. He himself is actually an expert speaker in the area of integration of science and faith, and he serves on the team that helped select tonight's speaker. So would you please welcome Bijan Yamani.
Welcome, everyone. It's so wonderful to see you all. Thanks for making the time to come. It's a pleasure and honor to introduce to you tonight Dr. Robert J. Marks. Dr. Marks is a distinguished professor in electrical engineering at Baylor University, and his contributions include the Zhao Atlas Marks time-frequency distribution in the field of signal processing, and the Chung-Marks theorem and Shannon sampling theory. Dr. Marks has published with over 200 different co-authors from more than 25 countries in 50 journals, and 10 of his papers have been reproduced in volumes of collections of outstanding papers. He's authored a number of books. I'll just mention 3: Introduction to Shannon Sampling and Interpolation Theory with Springer Verlag, Handbook of Fourier Analysis and its Applications at Oxford University Press, and his latest book that's coming out in January is going to be called Introduction to Evolutionary Informatics, and I encourage you to look for those. Tonight, he's going to be talking to us about the limits of what computers can do and how this contrasts with what minds can do. And so I'd like to, without further ado, welcome Dr. Marks, and let's give him a hand.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna go quickly, and we're going to cover a lot of material, but hopefully in a way that lets us understand what is happening. Here's the abstract of the talk. Okay, y'all got it? Okay, and here's kind of the abstract of the talk, some of the bullets that we're going to be talking about. One of them is, what is the source of creativity, design, functional information, and intelligence? Where does this come from? What are the implications of non-algorithmic phenomena? Most of us in computer science believe that, wow, if you can figure out how to do something, you can just write a computer program to do it. Well, there are things which are non-algorithmic. Computers can only do algorithmic things, and so they can't do everything. Are humans computers? Evidence that I believe that they're not. We'll talk about the Turing test. I'm sure many of you in computer science have heard about the Turing test, and we'll show why maybe this isn't the best test to do, and we'll propose another one called the Lovelace test. It wasn't originated by me or our group, but by another group, and we'll talk about that and why that, I think, is a more appropriate test for strong artificial intelligence. Does determinism imply knowability? We have the philosophy of determinism, and interestingly, we usually think that determinism implies knowability, but it doesn't, as we'll see. Can we prove that there exist things that are unknowable? And the answer is yes. I can prove, for example, that on your computer, if you have a language like C++ or Python or something else, that there is a number called Chaitin's number, that if you knew it, you could solve every open problem in mathematics that required a single counterexample. We know it lies between 0 and 1, and you could prove a lot of these theorems, but we can also prove that even though it exists on your computer, it is unknowable. So things exist which are indeed unknowable. And what is outside the reach of computers? As you can see, some of these topics kind of explore the limitations of philosophy. There's implications in theology, and I hope that those come across very, very easily. Let me go currently about the current PR that occurs about artificial intelligence. There is a robot called Asimo, after Isaac Asimov, named after him, made by Honda, and it's supposed to be this really smart robot that can walk around and do all incredible things. I think you all know about Garry Kasparov being beaten by Deep Blue in the artificial intelligence arena. We have people like Watson, who beat the experts in Jeopardy. These are examples of so-called artificial intelligence, and they're pretty impressive, aren't they? The most impressive operation in artificial intelligence happened just a few months ago, where an algorithm written by Google DeepMind, beat the world champion at Go, which is probably the most complex of all competitive games between two competitors. So these are examples of some of the things that artificial intelligence is doing that we really, really get excited about in terms of what computers can do. We have some notable people getting very concerned about artificial intelligence. Stephen Hawking is very concerned about artificial intelligence, and he recently opened a lab in Britain to create Terminator-style machines. You've seen the movie Terminator? I don't know if we want Terminator-style machines, but anyway, that's what this said. Another person is Bill Gates. Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, said, I don't understand why some people are not concerned about artificial intelligence. He's very scared of the future of artificial intelligence. One that I just saw, which is kind of interesting, is advanced robot. I just got this yesterday. Advanced robot can understand how humans think and knows how the brain works. Ooh, that's pretty cool, right? So you read through here and you find out all of these things. And you see all of these new electronics coming out. Here is one that IBM unveils cognitive computing chip to emulate the brain's capabilities. That's exciting, isn't it? This was published in 2011. When I saw it, it reminded me of an ad that I saw 22 years earlier. And this ad said, Portland ships a brain-like chip. Isn't that interesting? So we have a brain-like chip in 2011. We have a brain-like chip 22 years earlier. In reading these things, one has to be very careful. One of the things in the articles that you read about in terms of publicity, you have to be aware of the hedges. Terms like may be able to, in the near future, working towards, someday. If they are articles like that, usually you can ignore the hype which is associated with what is going on. There is also some other things. Beware of seductive semantics. I like that term, seductive semantics. These are terms made by marketing people. These are professors trying to land grants or companies trying to get government funding. And so they come up with marketing sort of techniques, seductive semantics, including things such as cognitive computing. That really, really sounds cool if you could do cognitive computing. Neural networks. I was involved a lot in the early days of neural networks. That was an example of seductive semantics. Oh boy, computers that could work the way that the brain works. Things that simulate the brain. That's some of the seductive semantics that are used in these articles. Currently, one of the big areas now is deep learning, which is also really cool. It can do a lot of good things. That's what Google used to win the game of Go, but nevertheless, it needed a word. It needed a word that had a lot of marketing capability, and so that was the case. I got really excited when I saw, oh, right here it is. Okay, there it is. I saw this article. Did anybody see this article? Movie written by Algorithm, turns out to be hilarious and intense. Did anybody see this? Go on. It's a play called Sunspring, and it was written by a computer that was trained with deep learning. And the person that wrote this said, oh, this is really cool because finally we have something creative that comes from an algorithm. But I went and looked at I watched the video. The video was kind of cool, but it turned out that the actors were filling in a lot of the stupidity of what was written. Let me give you an example of some of the dialogue. This is at the end. This was written by the computer. He is standing in the stairs and sitting on the floor. He takes a seat in the counter and pulls the camera cover to his back. He stares at it. He is on the phone. He cuts the shotgun from the edge of the room and puts it in his mouth. He sees a black hole in the floor leading to the man on the roof. He comes up behind him to protect him. He is still standing next to him. He looks through the door and the door closes. He looks at the bag from his backpack and starts to cry. Now, you can see that maybe this is, I don't know, I don't think it's creative, but it sure is interesting. And we see all sorts of different things. This has been around for a long time. This is all the science fiction you saw and that I saw from when I was a kid. Now we see some of the realizations of some of the science fiction things, but some of the claims that were initially made, we still haven't seen. One I remember as a boy was Ray Bradbury, I Sing the Body Electric. It was a story about a nanny that was hired, and the nanny was a robot. And they actually did a cut of it on Dimension X, which was a radio play, and the old Twilight Zone had a black and white half-hour program dedicated to I Sing the Body Electric, which again was a story about artificial intelligence. So what does all this mean, and where does it come from, and how are we to think about such things? When you get into problems like in sports, you always go back to the fundamentals. You go back to the foundations to see what these premises are built upon. And so that's what we're going to do with artificial intelligence. And we're going to visit some of the foundations of artificial intelligence. One of the main ways to prove or disprove something is meta-analysis. Let me give you a simple example of meta-analysis. In the Bible, Titus 1:12b said, Paul says, the Cretans are always liars. So if you have a Cretan come up to you and say, everything I say is a lie. Now, this is a statement, meta-analysis, that you apply it to itself. So if he says, everything I say is a lie, well, he's just lied, which means that he tells the truth. But if he tells the truth, he just told you a lie. But wait a minute, if he's lying, he just told you the truth. And you kind of go back and forth, don't you? And it turns out this in itself is a meaningless statement. It is, okay, it gets better. There's a great book that talked about this meta-analysis. It was Gödel, Escher, and Bach. Some of you might have heard about it. But it was the idea of these strange loops, like the Cretan saying, everything I say is a lie. And the premise of the author of this book, Hofstadter, is that strange loops don't exist. And if you come up upon a strange loop, you have to say, well, you know, I really have to question any validity of anything that this strange loop has to do with. So you can see Cretans are always liars. There's a loop there, isn't there? He tells a lie. If he's telling a lie, he's telling the truth. If he's telling the truth, he's telling a lie. And so there is a loop. So it turns out that that's a totally crazy sort of statement. It does turn out that you can use meta-thought to reveal self-refuting philosophies. And so when you examine a premise, if you apply that premise to itself, you can often come up with strange loops. The relativists would say there is no absolute right and wrong, all is relative. And then the response to that would be, I disagree. And then the first guy would say, you're wrong. And he says, and you're right? Yes, absolutely. So do you see what's happening here? The idea of no right and wrong is being defended by somebody that says they're right. This is a strange loop. And therefore you can look at this sort of philosophy and you can say, this philosophy has some problems associated with it. Here's another strange loop. We hear about skeptics all the time, and somebody comes up and he says, you know, everything I hear, I'm skeptical of all things. Well, the proper response to this is, are you skeptical of skepticism? Again, it's the idea of applying a premise to itself. Are you skeptical of skepticism? So therefore, we have a strange loop here, and we have to examine that philosophy a little bit more closely. I'm sorry, I have another one. Only things proven by science can be believed. This is kind of a philosophy called scientism. The interesting thing about this philosophy is as follows. The statement, only things proven by science can be believed, is itself a statement that cannot be proven by science. Rather, it is a statement of philosophy about science. So therefore, the statement in itself is self-refuting. It is one of Hofstadter's strange loops. There is a very famous New Age philosopher called Deepak Chopra. Have any of you heard of him? Okay, he's kind of a New Age person. One of the aspects of his philosophy was challenged in the following clip, which is a self-refuting statement.
I want to take another question. There's a gentleman in the red shirt back there. He's had his hand up for a while. Come up to the microphone.
My question's for Deepak and the bishop. Now, you stated before that all belief is a cover-up for insecurity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that?
Yes.
Thank you.
That was a very fresh debunking of a self-refuting philosophy, wasn't it? So Deepak, if he was right, that belief was covering up his own insecurities. One of the good places that strange loops are used because they don't exist is in mathematics. And those of you in mathematics know about proving proofs through counterexamples, through so-called reductio absurdum. You assume something, you develop the proof, you show that there is a contradiction to the original assumption, therefore the proof can't be right. This is itself a strange loop. So watch closely. I have a proof that all positive integers are interesting. Would you like to see that proof? Okay. We're first of all going to make the assumption. We're going to make the assumption that there is a smallest, if all positive integers are uninteresting, there exists the smallest uninteresting positive integer. Do you agree? But that's interesting. Okay, so therefore I have proven that all positive integers are interesting. So this is an example of proof by contradiction. This seems like a play game that I'm going to show you, but it's actually very, very serious as we get into something called algorithmic information theory. It's called Berry's paradox. Berry said, let's let X, we're going to define X. X is the smallest positive integer that requires more than 20 words to define. That's a fair statement, isn't it? There doesn't seem to be any self-reference here, except when you look closely, there's something interesting that does indeed happen. The sentence, X is the smallest positive integer that requires more than 20 words to define, already defines X using only 15 words. So what does this mean? This is a self-refuting statement, so that first statement doesn't, I don't know, it's meaningless. It's without meaning. This leads us into things which are not algorithmic and sometimes not unknowable. Let's talk about this from the viewpoint of so-called elegant programs. Suppose you have an output to a computer program. There exists a number of programs which give you that output, right? And some of those programs are shorter than other ones. Well, there exists a shortest program. That is referred to by Gregory Chaitin as the elegant program. That's the shortest possible program that can give you a specific output. So we ask ourselves the question whether we can write a program, and we're going to call it the EPG, the Intelligent Program Generator, to compute elegant programs. So we are going to give this elegant program an output, and then this program is going to give us the shortest possible computer program that generates that corresponding output. Is that okay? So that's what we want to do. So here is the basic idea. Oh, by the way, if you're into information theory, the program length of the shortest program is sometimes referred to as the Kolmogorov complexity of the object, or the Kolmogorov information. So here is the idea behind it. Again, we have any desired output going into the elegant program generator and then generating the so-called elegant program. Well, this actually is very close to Berry's paradox, and let me show you what I mean. We have this elegant program generator. If we write it, then it has a certain length. The first thing we have to realize is that we can always generate an output that requires an arbitrarily large elegant program. There isn't, the more complicated the output is, the bigger the elegant program is going to be. And you can always generate an output with an arbitrarily large Kolmogorov complexity. So with that in mind, assume that the elegant program generator is a computer program that we write that is 10 gigabytes long, because it's a computer program itself, correct? So therefore, it's going to have a certain length in terms of its, what it does. And then eventually, we're going to come up to an elegant program that has a Kolmogorov complexity of 20 gigabytes. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take that intelligent program generator, and it can generate an elegant program requiring more than 20 gigabytes. But we have a contradiction, don't we? We have something which outputs a 20 gigabyte elegant program. So this output is 20 gigabytes. But it required a 10 gigabyte program to generate it. So that 10 gigabyte elegant program generator is smaller than the 20 gigabytes of the overall computer program. So therefore, it's not possible. It turns out that this is not algorithmic. It's not algorithmic because we have just shown that it is impossible to write a computer program, to look at another program, to diagnose another program, and not another program, but an output, and generate the elegant program output. That's pretty cool. So that turns out to be non-algorithmic, something you cannot write a computer program to do. So again, the conclusion is that the elegant program generator is short than the elegant program, and so therefore we have a contradiction. Therefore, the result cannot be the shortest program. Thus, we have an intelligent program generator cannot be written. That's pretty cool. There's also another non-algorithmic process which is introduced to most undergraduate computer science and computer engineering program students, referred to as the Turing halting problem. The Turing halting problem says that if you have a computer program, you cannot write a computer program to analyze that computer program to say whether that program will run forever or to run for a little bit and stop. Now, obviously, there's programs that's kind of obvious they'll stop. If you have a short program and the first statement is stop, that's going to stop, right? But the idea is that any arbitrary computer program that you give it, that this halting problem, this halting program, will be able to analyze that computer program without running it and say whether or not it'll stop, whether or not it will stop. And this was proven by Turing, and is actually kind of a classic example of something that a computer cannot do. So a halting program cannot be written. So much like the elegant program generator, the halting program is non-algorithmic. You can't write a computer program to do it. There are a lot of things which are not algorithmic. There was a generalization of this called Rice's theorem. Rice's theorem said, not only can you not figure out whether a program is going to halt, you can't even figure out for an arbitrary program whether it'll ever print out the number of 3 or not. So nothing exciting that a program can do can ever be determined by another computer program. So all of these things are indeed non-algorithmic. So the Rice's theorem formally says all non-trivial semantic properties of programs are undecidable, and that includes, as a special case, the halting problem. I always found this interesting because this really exposes determinism. If you have a computer program, it sits there, it's deterministic. I have a picture of one on the screen over here, right? So I have a picture of one on the screen, and that is deterministic, yet what's going to do? There's no way I can figure out what it's going to do because there's no way I can analyze it algorithmically to tell me what it's going to do. So therefore, determinism, this existence of the computer program, which is totally deterministic, let's assume there's nothing stochastic or random in it, is what it does is unknowable unless you actually run it. And that is pretty heavy. The person that popularized the idea of determinism was Laplace. Many of you who are students of mathematics and engineering recognize things as the Laplace transform and Laplace probability densities and stuff. But Laplace himself was a philosopher, and he was a big proponent of determinism. He believed that if you knew the position of every particle in the universe and the acceleration of the velocity, then you could forecast the future. The idea of Rice's theorem kind of debunks that. Even though you have the deterministic knowledge of everything that happens, it doesn't mean necessarily that the future is knowable. So here's kind of the summary of where we're at. The non-algorithmic, the unprovable, and the unknowable. Computers can execute algorithms. The halting oracle, the halting program, is non-algorithmic. The elegant programmer generator is non-algorithmic. Much that is non-algorithmic is unknowable. For example, the elegant program, you can show that if you have a program, you can never show it's the shortest program. You can get closer and closer and closer to a program you know exists, but you're never quite sure that you're there. And so you can approach it. Much that is algorithmic can be unknowable, and for example, that's the Kolmogorov complexity. What else might be unknowable? What else might be unprovable? Well, here's something which might be unprovable. We don't know because mathematicians are always creative. It's so-called Goldbach conjecture. This is one of the oldest unproven math theorems. It was proposed in 1742 by Goldbach in a letter to the greatest mathematician of all time, Leonard Euler. And he said, you know what? Every even number can be expressed as the sum of two primes. Every even number can be expressed as the sum of two primes. When I first heard that, I said, that's incredible. That can't be. Because it seems like there's a lot more even numbers than there are primes. But they have checked this to millions and billions and trillions, and they have never found a counterexample. Of course, it's never been proven, because you can't prove it by running the exhaustive programs. So here are some examples. 32 is equal to 29 plus 3. 144, it's an even number. This is 131 plus 13, both prime numbers. And then the last one, 15,742, can be written as the sum of two prime numbers. So no matter how large you get, nobody has really ever found a counterexample to Goldbach's conjecture, which is that every even number can be expressed as the sum of two primes. There's a lot of other interesting problems which are open. One is Legendre's conjecture. He said take any two sequential numbers, like 3 squared and 4 squared. And if you square the numbers, you get the interval between 9 and 16. He said between the interval 9 and 16, there's always a prime number. And it turns out, yeah, between a 9 and 16 lives the number 11. Let's take 8 squared and 9 squared, sequential integers and the square of them. Between these two intervals, there lies a prime number, which is 71, so that works too. And he conjectured that no matter what two sequential numbers you chose, if you squared them, between those two numbers would be a prime number. Pretty cool, huh? There's the Riemann zeta function. If you saw the movie A Terrible Mind, no, it wasn't A Terrible Mind, what was it? A Beautiful Mind. Did anybody read the book? If you read the book, A Beautiful Mind, he did not have a beautiful mind. He was kind of a weird guy. But anyway, in the movie, Russell Crowe talked about the idea of the Riemann hypothesis. And he went up to a student in the movie and he said, don't waste your life on the Riemann hypothesis. Many people have totally dedicated their careers to trying to prove it. Nobody has proved it. But the Riemann hypothesis says that the real part of any non-trivial zero of the Riemann zeta function is 1/2. The reason for that we won't go into, but again, that's the idea of the Riemann zeta function. And there is an outstanding $1 million prize if you can prove the Riemann zeta theorem. Here is a recent one proposed in 1958, which may or may not be provable. The Gilbreth conjecture. He took the prime numbers and then he took the difference between them. You see the prime numbers 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. He took the first two prime numbers and he did the subtraction and he got 1. He took the second two prime numbers, subtracted them, it took the magnitude of their difference and got 2. And so can you see from the set of prime numbers that if you took the difference between the adjacent prime numbers, that you always get a sequence of numbers? Then you take that number and you do that sequence of numbers and you do exactly the same thing. And you take that set of numbers and you repeat it, you do exactly the same thing. Well, the interesting thing that Gilbreth found out is that in everything he did, the first number was always 1. Isn't that weird? Nobody's proven the Gilbreth conjecture yet, but they have tested it to millions and billions, and is it provable? Maybe, maybe not. Now, this shows you the importance of why there isn't a halting oracle. Let's assume, for example, there was a halting oracle. Everybody in here that's had a computer course could write a little program testing the Goldbach conjecture. You could write a little program taking an even number, checking and seeing if there's 2 primes, right? If there was 2 primes, you go to the next even number, check and see if there's 2 primes. If there was, you would continue that. You might get to the point, if the Goldbach's conjecture isn't true, you'll get to an even number, there isn't 2 primes. I have solved the Goldbach conjecture by finding a single counterexample. Now notice this program that you wrote, I could write it, you could write it. What will happen? If that program stops, what have you shown? You've shown there exists a counterexample, right? It has looped, it has found a counterexample, and has exited the program. What happens if that program runs forever? What happens? The Goldbach conjecture is true, because you never ever find a result, because that program never halts. So it's very unfortunate that we don't have a halting oracle, because if we did, we could solve the Goldbach conjecture. If we had a halting oracle, we did this example for Goldbach's conjecture, but if we had a halting oracle, we could also, I think you could see, solve Legendre's conjecture, right? Same thing, a looping program that if it found a counterexample would exit, and if it didn't, it would run forever. We could solve the Galbraith conjecture, and we could solve the Riemann hypothesis and get $1 million. But the halting oracle doesn't exist. It is non-algorithmic. The halting oracle idea actually goes back to Kurt Gödel in Gödel's theorem. You've heard about it. It's incredible because he actually toppled the current list, at the time, momentum of mathematics with his theorem. The other thing he showed, and this is kind of interesting. I don't know where you are theistically, but after his death, Gödel came up with a proof of God. It was published after his death. So here it is. If you ever come up somebody and say, "Is there a God?" you can say, "Yeah, it's right here. This is Gödel's proof." He actually follows Aslam's ontological proof of God, and he uses it using propositional logic. So if you have any questions, send me email and we can talk about it. Nobody ever sends me email to talk about it, though. So, but this is something that you can use to bluff people, if you will. But the basic idea, this was not what he was famous for. Gödel's idea was as follows. All mathematics is based on assumptions, axioms. From these axioms, you develop beautiful theories. The first one to do this was Euclid and Euclid's planar geometry. And he made 5 assumptions which he assumed were just true. And these were Euclid's postulates. His first one, for example, a straight line segment can be drawn joining any 2 points. Makes sense. Is that something we should need to prove? No, that's something we're going to assume. So we make 5 of these assumptions. These are referred to as Euclid's postulates or Euclid's axioms. And from this, Euclid was able to develop the whole beautiful field of planar geometry. This is not only true in planar geometry, but it's also true in probability theory. If you're a probability theorist, you know that there's certain, I think there's 5 different axioms in probability, and from that you can generate all the probability theory. But here's the interesting part. The laws of physics are, in essence, an axiom. Have you ever thought about it, that you could write all the laws of physics on a single sheet of paper? And that's what's shown here on the right. You can see there's a comma missing. No, you can't see what's going on. But on the upper half, we have things like relativity, we have Newtonian mechanics, we have Maxwell's equations on here. On the bottom, we have quantum mechanics and some different things. And these are really all of the laws of physics that we need to know to prove everything in physics. I have a colleague at Baylor University that spends his entire life studying Maxwell's equations, just that axiom and the consequences of Maxwell's equations. So these are axioms, so it shows that maybe the laws of physics are in a way axiomatic, just like Euclid's postulates. Computers. Your computer, if you have a programming language on it, MATLAB, C++, Python, whatever it is, it turns out to be said to be a Turing machine, Turing equivalent. And so you have a Turing machine. And all of these machines, all of these computers can be shown to be equivalent to the original Turing machine. Now, the Turing machine had only specific things that it could do. It had a tape, and this tape could move, and you could write on the tape, and you could back it up, and do all of these things. But notice each one of these operations were, in essence, an axiom of the operation of the computing machine. Now, the computer machine, it turns out, can do anything algorithmic. You give me an algorithm, and I can write a program to do it, because it gives us a set of sequential steps to do it. But if you give me something non-algorithmic, like the halting problem, there's no way that I can do it. Now, at the time, there were a couple of guys, Alfred North Whitehead, Sir Alfred North Whitehead, and I'm getting a little feedback here. At least I'm hearing some feedback. Can we turn it down just a touch? And I'll try to talk louder. Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me upstairs? Okay, good. Anyway, these guys were writing a book called Principia Mathematica. Some people say it's the greatest book ever written that nobody's ever read. because it was an axiomatic development that they hoped would generate all of mathematics. And so they started out with some basic axioms, and they came up with some rules, some propositional logic to manipulate these axioms, and they were on their way to generating a theory of all mathematics. And then came along a little nerd from Austria called Kurt Gödel, and he showed that what these guys were doing was not possible. And this was the result, and the result of that was something called Gödel's incompleteness theorem. And I'm going to give you a kind of a thumbnail sketch of it. Gödel showed that if you were trying to develop these things from axioms, no matter what axioms you started with, you would eventually arrive at a theorem. And I'm going to call this theorem X. And theorem X would show that theorem X cannot be proved. Now you notice the meta self-reference that Gödel's theorem has, right? Theorem X cannot be proved. Now from this simplified version of his proof, we can show some things. If we don't prove theorem X, the system is incomplete. That means there are things which we can't prove. If we can prove theorem X, the system is inconsistent because we have shown that we have said theorem X, and then we have proved theorem X, that theorem X can't be proved. So this is the general idea behind Gödel's idea. There's a great cartoon, I think it's XYKD, anybody? XK, what? XKCD, where these people are approaching Gödel, and he says, "Hey Gödel, we're computing a comprehensive list of fetishes. What turns you on?" And his response is, "Anything that isn't on your list." Okay, so that's how Gödel would answer. Stephen Hawking has abandoned the theory of everything in physics. You familiar with the theory of everything? The idea that you wanted to get some physical laws that described all of the different forces. And he actually abandoned this. This was from a paper he wrote in 2004. Up to now, most people have implicitly assumed that there is an ultimate theory that we will eventually discover. Indeed, I myself have suggested we might find it quite soon. Maybe it is not possible to formulate the theory of the universe in a finite number of statements. This is very reminiscent of Gödel's theorem. This says that any finite system of axioms is not sufficient to prove every result in mathematics. So hopefully if we have a set of axioms and we begin to develop, we hope that we have consistency, right? Hopefully we don't have contradictions in it. So that means if everything is consistent, then whatever theory we develop is incomplete. It was Roger Penrose, who was a colleague of Gödel. Gödel and Hawking worked together and developed the Penrose-Hawking singularity theorem, was the first to apply the idea, to my knowledge, the idea that Gödel's theorem can be used to show that that humans are not computers. He wrote 2 wonderful books. They're not easy reads if you get a hold of them, but it's The Emperor's New Mind and Shadows of the Mind. And in it, he makes some very compelling evidence. He gives some very compelling evidence that the human mind is not a computer. To simplify things, he says computers cannot be creative. They cannot do anything that they're not programmed to do. See that program that was programmed to win at Go? It was evolved using evolutionary sort of processes, but it wouldn't go on and learn chess, wouldn't go on and learn checkers, even though they're simpler games. Why not? Because the computer programmer didn't tell it to do that. There wasn't the idea of creativity beyond what the programmer said. Here are some examples, some given by Penrose, on the idea of creativity and his study of the idea of creativity both in mathematics and the art. Friedrich Gauss, and I'm sure many of you heard of Gaussian curves, Gaussian elimination, Gauss's law is one of Maxwell's equations. And he talked about this so-called flash of genius, and we'll hear this quite a bit. He said, "Finally, 2 days ago, I succeeded not on account of my hard efforts, but by grace of the Lord, like a sudden flash of lightning, the riddle was solved. I am unable to say what was the conducting thread that connected what I previously knew with what made my success possible." So he said his flash of genius was beyond his experience, is basically what he was saying. At least that was his analysis of it. We've all heard of Nikola Tesla. When he discovered the alternating current motor, he also had a flash of genius. In his own words, Nikola Tesla said, "The idea came like a flash of lightning." Isn't it interesting, the use of the similar sort of thing? And in an instant, the truth was revealed. I drew with a stick in my hand the diagram showed 6 years later at my address before the American Institute of Electrical Engineers. And my companion understood them perfectly. So he had this flash of lightning, and before it left him, he drew this linear induction machine in the dirt. There was a movie called Flash of Genius. It used to be in the United States, before you got a patent, you had to give evidence that your patent contained a flash of genius. That was US patent law. It has since been discontinued, and if you look at the patents, you can see the effects of that. But this is a flash of genius, and it was about the guy that invented the intermittent window wipers, and his flash of genius was making his invention. I actually have a student now looking at the idea of these flashes of genius and their use in business. Used to think that the free enterprise system was kind of Darwinian, everybody kind of competing with each other. According to Thiel, this isn't the case. It's new ideas, new innovations, new flashes of genius which are introduced into the marketplace that make things work. The interesting thing is this not only occurs in patents and such, it occurs in the arts. How many know who Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers is? 3 people. They were a great pop band a long time ago. And then when he got old, he started a band called who? It's shown in the upper right slide here. The Traveling Wilburys. Oh, you guys. And it include people such as Bob Dylan. Who's Bob Dylan? He made the news recently because why? He won a Nobel Prize, right, in literature? And it include Tom Petty, Roy Orbison, and George Harrison of the Beatles. Anyway, on his songwriting, he wrote a lot of catchy songs. He says, you know, it's so hard to understand. I really don't understand, but I do know that the best songs often just appear. You're sitting there with your guitar or piano and you bang on it, it just falls out of the sky. I hesitate to even try to understand it for fear that it might make it go away. It's a spiritual thing. I thought that's kind of interesting. And here is a knighted Briton by the name of Paul McCartney talking about writing the song Yesterday. How many of you know the song Yesterday? And it's how he did it. It was a flash of genius. Let's listen to him.
I just woke up one morning with this tune in my head. I thought, I don't know this tune, or do I? It's like an old jazz tune or something, and because my dad used to know a lot of old jazz stuff. Well, maybe I've just remembered it or somewhere. So I sort of went to the piano, found the chords to it. You know, it was like in G, F sharp minor 7, sort of B and that, and kind of just remembered it, made sure I remembered it, and then I just hawked it round to all my friends and stuff and said, "What's this? You know, it's got to be something. It's like a good little tune, you know." And I couldn't have written it because I just dreamed it. You know, you don't get that lucky.
So how do we test whether or not getting back home, whether or not a computer is whether the human mind is a computer or not? Turing proposed the idea of a Turing test. And as you can see, it's a test for intelligence in a computer requiring that a human being should be able to distinguish the machine from another human being by using the replies to questions put to both. And you've heard about the Turing machine. There was this, you see every once in a while in the newspaper, such and such has passed the Turing test, et cetera. I think serious people in computer science recognize that, well, you know, maybe this isn't the case. This is from a paper by Jord, Bellow, and Ferrucci. He said, although progress towards Turing's dream is being made, it's coming only on the strength of clever but shallow trickery. For example, the human creators of artificial agents that compete in present-day versions of the Turing test know all too well that they have merely tried to fool those people who interact with their agents into believing that these agents really have minds. So in other words, the Turing test has been gamed. You look at the results assumed by the Turing test, and then you write programs to get around the Turing test. Bringsford, Bellow, and Ferrucci? and Ferrucci proposed something else. They proposed the Lovelace test. Augusta Ada King Noel, Countess of Lovelace, is said by some to be the first computer program. In the early part of the 19th century, Babbage generated this mechanical computer, and Ada Lovelace was the first to actually write a computer program, an algorithm that was executed by this. And she said something which I think is true and agrees with the premise of our talk. Computers can't create anything, for creation requires minimally originating something. But computers originate nothing. They merely do that which we order them to do via the program. So here's the Lovelace test proposed by these people. Strong AI will be demonstrated. Now this is strong AI. Turing test is sometimes referred as weak AI. Strong AI will be demonstrated when a machine's creativity is beyond the explanation of its creator. Because certainly this is what humans have the ability to do. So if you have checkers and you train a program to play checkers and it goes on and learns chess without you telling it to, that would pass the Lovelace test. There was a NASA antenna, which was developed probably close to here, where they used an evolutionary program to develop the antenna that you see on the left here. It looks like a paperclip, which is bent, right? But this was actually developed. But you know what? This antenna was the result of evolutionary computing and was exactly what the programmers had designed it to do. If that program went on and did something else exciting, such as designed a jet aircraft or some other sort of electronics, then it would have passed the Lovelace test. I had a colleague of mine walk into my office one time and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm writing an evolutionary program." And he said, "Ooh, good, when can I talk to it?" Well, of course, that's ridiculous, because I was writing that program to do one specific task, and that was what it was going to do. It wasn't going to develop into something that I could talk to. So anyway, this is the Lovelace test, and something that could be, can be a test to whether computers, a computer of the future, has actually been able to do something which is actually creative. My second last slide is a very compelling argument given by Searles. It's called Searles' Chinese room and explains the operation of a computer and whether or not computers can gain consciousness or not. Searle talks about a Chinese room, and I'm going to give a little variation of it. But the idea is that there are phrases in Portuguese which are slipped into the room. The agent in the Chinese room takes the Portuguese and looks up in different tables, opens up different file drawers, and searches for the corresponding translation in Chinese, after which they slip the Chinese translation out. Now, if you look at this from the outside, it kind of looks like this computer knows how to translate Portuguese into Chinese. Does it? No, it has no idea what it's doing. It's just doing what it was programmed to do. It doesn't have any consciousness. It doesn't have any deep understanding of what it's going to do. It simply is doing what it was programmed to do. Okay. Our brains are beyond algorithms. Have we proved it? No, but I think that there's incredibly compelling evidence that that is indeed true. Now, Roger Penrose, who I talked to, is an agnostic and atheist. He believes that the answer of creativity lies in something called quantum tubules. So he's looking at a materialistic, naturalistic solution to the problem. Now, if we ever get to the point where we can mimic these quantum tubules and come up with computers that are creative, watch out. Then I think I'm with Bill Gates. Let's watch out for artificial intelligence and what these people can do. But we're nowhere near that. We're nowhere near of synthesizing the necessity. It could be that this ability of creativity, it could be that it's unknowable. Maybe we don't have the capability of analyzing ourselves by doing a meta-analysis of ourselves and deciding whether or not, or deciding how we do creativity. I mean, that's something which is really interesting. Intelligence is the source of creativity. You only see creativity from intelligence. And the other takeaway is that there are things that are true and are known to exist that will never be proved nor computed. And so that is an incredibly powerful statement, I think. And again, is determined by the mathematics. So with that, let me give an advertisement here. I have a book coming out written with William Dembski and Winston Ewart. It's coming out in January from World Scientific, called Introduction to Evolutionary Informatics. It goes through some of the arguments that we talked about today, as well as some other things having to do with computers and computer search. There's also a computer site, which if you're interested in these sorts of things, it's called, as you can see in the lower left, Evo-Info.org. And Evo-Info.org has lots of resources, videos, and different things. If you want to email me and get more information, if you want to interact with me, my email address is in the bottom right corner. Be glad to chat with you about that. The other thing you might have gathered because of the topic of this conference and this forum, that I am a Christian. I have been a Christian since I've been a junior in college, and I've followed Christ ever since then. One of the things that I like doing is exploring things, because I think that science actually reveals the glory of God. That is actually something which was said by Louis Pasteur. The more he looks into science, the more he gets excited about it. So there's another website, christiancalculus.com, that talks about the faith of scientists of past. If you've taken courses in engineering, you know names such as Bayes' theorem. Did you know Bayes was a Presbyterian minister and that he never published before he died? Newton actually spent more time writing on Old Testament prophecy than he did on Newtonian laws. Robert Boyle, Cauchy, Francis Collins, who is the current director of NIH, and is a Christian. Jonas Kepler, George Washington Carver, Blaise Pascal, my hero Blaise Pascal. You have to read about his conversion to Christianity and some of the things that happened there. Michael Faraday, and the list goes on. And so these are people. It doesn't mean that all of the scientists were followers of God or Christ. It simply means that there were people that weren't. One was Laplace. Laplace, when asked by Napoleon when he got a treatise on celestial mechanics, Napoleon looked through it and he said, "Where's God in here?" And Laplace says, "I had no need for God in what I do." So there were the theists and there were the atheists, but it's fun to look at them historically, because I think many times in universities and courses that we have, we know what these men and women did, but we don't know who they were and what motivated them. And so the purpose of this website is to talk about that. So with that, I believe that concludes my talk. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, just took a few. Before we go into our discussion groups, we're just going to take a few minutes to see if there's any questions from the crowd for Dr. Marks that you want him to address before we go into those groups. So are there any? Great. If you'd stand and just kind of shout it out, we'll try to repeat the question.
I'm old enough to remember the early days of AI, and the outrageous claims that were made is the fact that none of them have come true, and what seems to be an eternity proof that in fact they were false to begin with.
So is the question, were the early claims of AI false to begin with?
What can you tell about AI, since people have been working on this problem for a long time and are not getting any closer?
Well, I do believe that in order to appreciate AI, one has to study this incredible field of algorithmic information theory. It is so exciting that all of the science fiction I read as a kid is just boring, because this stuff is real. The idea of the existence of the unknowable, and things that exist which you can't prove, and its implications theologically and philosophically on the workings of the human mind. It's just a fantastic area. And I think proponents of AI and those that are scared of AI, like Stephen Hawking and Bill Gates, need to get a better understanding of the algorithmic information theory and the limits on the Turing machine. Now, this doesn't mean that we'll never get strong AI. We haven't proven that. We have proven, though, that Turing machines, which translate to all of your computers, can never do anything creative. And until we can actually do something creative, I don't think that we have a lot to fear about, because these computers are going to be doing things that people tell them to do. Sometimes they're going to tell them to do bad things, but nevertheless, they're still just going to do what they're told to do.
Another question. Andrew.
So this is more of a personal question, and it's based on kind of my own just existence of it. So do you personally believe that it is possible to design a computing mechanism, and say computing mechanism out of a computer, because a computer, as you define it, is something that goes sequentially through things, that has the capability of being creative. The reason I ask is because we have samples all around us. Every human brain, every person has the capability of being creative. So why couldn't we, at least in theory, design something to do that?
Well, I think that the arguments of Roger Penrose and some of these other people, the limits of algorithmic, the limits which have been shown by algorithmic information theory, show that computers cannot do this. Now, please be careful. I'm not saying that it will never be done. If I say it will never be done and that this is a source of God, I do believe that. But I also am open-minded if somebody comes and gives me a counterexample. But people that slam their fist and say that they have a corner on truth are not to be believed. And I think that this would be kind of a God of the gaps sort of argument. Yet I would also argue that Penrose says that there's quantum tubules, which he is still investigating. And he could be right, but that's kind of a Darwin of the gaps, isn't it? So we have both of these cases, and until we find out more information, right now I believe that it requires an intelligence, a human intelligence or extra-human intelligence to create information and meaningful, useful, functional information. Yes. I'll just...
So a question about, I guess, your notion of creativity, particularly in the instance of this, the DeepMind project that defeated the World Go champion. I think there was an instance, I believe in the third game, when the champion described that the computer made a move that no human would ever make. And was in a dumbfounded and heavily weed room for about 30 to 45 minutes before coming back to it. And so perhaps it's a narrow notion of creativity, in that the computer was playing the game that it was programmed to play, but it played it in a way that no human would have ever done it, and potentially also more terrifying in a way that no human would understand, but could still defeat the human being at it. So I guess your notion, my question is more about how you define creativity, and is it always that you can just kind of randomly do something that you're not programmed to do, or is it you do things that you wouldn't be able to, I guess, predict from the output, I guess, to get?
Well, first of all, the idea of the Lovelace test assumes that you cannot go back to the program and explain why the computer program did what the computer program could do. As far as DeepMind, if you look at deep learning and convolutional neural networks and go to the Wikipedia page, you'll find out that I was the co-author of one of the first papers on convolutional neural networks, so I'm up on it. So let me brag about that. As far as the creativity aspect, I do swarm intelligence, and swarm intelligence is highly stochastic. And many times I look at the result and I say, wow, is that incredible? But the idea of it being incredible does not pass the Lovelace test, because I can always go back to the code and I can see why it was incredible. One of the things that we saw in swarm intelligence in predator-prey was an evolutionary process where these organisms actually trapped a prey and actually closed in on it. I said, wow, we really didn't program it to do that, yet it had this surprising ability that the predator kind of trapped the prey and went in and captured the prey. But we looked back at the algorithm and looked at all of the opportunities that we gave it, and we said, oh, it arrived at this position. That makes sense. So notice the programmer there was able to explain the outcome of the computer process. And in this Go mechanism, I'm not intimately familiar with what you're talking about, but if the computer programmer would go back and say, oh yes, I see why this very strange operation occurred, then that would be an action which was in the knowledge of the programmer and does not pass the Lovelace test. So the creativity would be for Go to go on and learn Monopoly or something like that. That would be something creativity. But something surprising is not the same as something which is creative.
I know there could be many more questions. I think we're going to move to our discussion groups. So why don't we move to discussion?
How'd it go?
Terrific. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, really.